Vigilants, welcome to another exciting episode on Veegilant Podcast. It's pleasing to have you all on board today. Now, a very big thank you to all Vigilants for always tuning in. We love you so much. I love you to the moon and back. I'm still your host, Olaito Babatine, and with me is the energy queen, the vibe queen, my very own Odiawa from Edo State. Good afternoon, Precious. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great, and you?
No, Precious, you sound very excited this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm actually happy. I'm happy. I'm feeling fly.
Why are you happy?
2 months, baby.
Okay, so last week we talked about materialism and gender expectation. We talked about how the society expects one thing or the other from the society. And then I think one of the take home was that no matter what the society expects from you, you should know that you're enough and you should love yourself more. We brought in a guest who talked more about it and it was really fun. And if you did not listen to that episode, you're missing a lot because I actually had fun on the episode. But this week, we're talking about election, the bedrock of democracy. Now, democracy, what we know democracy as is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But then, I think we've lost touch of that in Nigeria. I'm not sure we really know what that means anymore. Now, the first election in Nigeria was held in 1959, just a year before independence. These elections were for the members of the Legislative Council, and they marked the beginning of Nigeria's parliamentary system. The 2015 general election is widely considered the most free and fair election in Nigeria's history. This election marked the first time in the country's history that an incumbent president, Goodluck Jonathan, peacefully handed over power to the opposing candidate, Muhammadu Buhari, after losing the election. And I think that was where our problem started in Nigeria. Be precious. I think our problem started then in Nigeria. We can only hope for the best now. Now, also, there's this election during MKO Abiola's time too, which was said to be free and fair election. However, can we really say Nigerians are enjoying democracy?
At all.
You don't believe that, right? Yeah, I don't think this government is for the people anymore. It is for the people in power, the people that are living in luxury.
For the leaders and their godfathers.
Exactly. Even the policy they make, I don't think is for the well-being of the people anymore at this point.
For themselves and their family.
So we believe now that democracy is not for the people. So in order to address the issue of election and how Nigerians have lost their touch when it comes to election and democracy, we have a seasoned political analyst, EPA. Did I call it correctly?
EPA,
yeah. Odiawa Ehai is a presenter of Viewpoint, a political show on VG Media. Good afternoon, Mr. Odiawa.
Afternoon, Olaito. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing great.
And Precious, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
I can feel some energy because I can sense some voter apathy from your ends.
No, not at all. There's no political apathy here. We are good people.
We are one Nigeria.
Exactly. We are. All right. So, like I said earlier, election is supposed to be free and fair. We know that, but now we hear of violence, we hear of vote buying, we hear of intimidation during election. Now, reflecting on the recent Edo State election, reports indicated that some parties engaged in vote buying in a certain area in Edo State, and there was this issue of shooting too that happened. Now, as the political analyst that you are, how do you think this can be addressed? I mean, the issue of vote buying, violence, intimidation during election.
Okay, to start with, the US elections were just concluded yesterday.
Yeah.
We could see some kind of verbal attacks instead of physical attacks. So I think we need to outgrow this level of violence, whereby we need to engage in all forms of viciousness, bringing out guns, machetes, or bottles, or getting confrontational, or maybe attacking people's families, or maybe there are some deficiencies or lapses from maybe one candidate's end. Why? Probably because he doesn't hear the language. I'm using now zeroing into the Edo State elections now. Okay. Now, language shouldn't be a preference or prerequisite for somebody to actually represent the people. How can you perform? How can you deliver? That is what the electorate should actually look to, because it doesn't specify in the Constitution or Electoral Act that you must hear the language before you're sworn into power you take power. So these are things people should also look at. A situation whereby people feel dissatisfied, where they cannot even grasp power. That is when you see all this sense of violence or probably vote buying just to achieve anything by any means necessary. They go the extra mile. We go to Lagos State. We should hear of Funshaw Williams, where he was decapitated in bed or beheaded in bed. So all those kind of things. I think maybe we here, not just the states now, Edo State, Ondo states, who are having off-cycle elections, the nation at large, Africa as a whole, they need to be resensitized and outgrow this mentality of it's a must win by all situations. The only time we have actually seen any form of fair elections will be 1959, which you talked about, when Ambrose Ali and a few in the parliamentary system as at back then were pushing for independence. And another time again will be 1993, where it was even mad also. And of course, MK was kicked out of the way and there was an interim government set in place. You can now see where election, which is an ingredient of democracy, has not really been really stuck to or really digested in the system, Nigeria or Africa as a whole. So we have a long way to go when it comes to elections, because violence is still prevalent in today's elections. All sorts of vote buying or anomalies in elections are still prevalent. We have a long way to go.
All right. You talked about the US elections. I just want us to touch a little bit on that. There was this campaign with Trump and Harris. And do you think Harris didn't win this election because she's a woman? Now, let's look at Nigeria. We also know that there's this stereotype of men leads in Nigeria. But I feel US is a more civilized country. Why do you think Trump had the upper hand? Because when he contested with Biden, we know he lost the election. He lost woefully. But now this time around that he contested with a female, he lost the election. Why do you think this happened?
First of all, there's something we need to look at in politics, and that's gender sensitivity. So it's a patrilineal thing, whereby the man is always dominant in any particular field, particularly when there's always this sense of danger in that field. You see, the men are more pronounced in the military than the women, but any woman who stands out in the military is always defined. So that's the thing. We have to look closely on gender sensitivity. How well can she also deliver? Secondly, there are also some other prerequisites or requirements which the people, based on their debates from the Democrats or Republicans, Harris was representing the Democrats, Trump was representing the Republicans. Alone, the court cases which he had alone should have gotten him out of the way, not only from his candidature for the Republicans, but also emerging as president. If you remember, before he even left out of the office, it is typical presidential ethics that when you're leaving the White House, approaching the Black Hawk is the presidential helicopter. Now, upon approaching it, you shake the incoming president and then you leave. He didn't do that when Biden was coming in. Okay. So that was insult on democracy. Irrespective of whether the US is the world power, there's still some form of, I would say, their own form of violence in politics or election is polished. Ours is very crude. Why? Because it's shown, it's pronounced. Theirs is very polished. Why? Because the white man is known to be more refined than we. That's why the saying goes, if you want to hide anything from a black man, put it in a book. We hardly read. If you buy a TV set, now the black man will not read the manual. You say, press here.
That's all.
It's working. So when you look at all this kind of stuff, it now begins to see our level of intelligence. You see that it's shallow. We still need to up our game when it comes to intellectual value, when it comes to elections, or anything or any ingredients or feature when it comes to democracy. So the chauvinistic value now, which is now coming in by trying to make the woman look less. Believe you me, if it was an influential woman like Hillary Clinton, who is a prominent figure, one-time first lady, I think she would have pulled more votes. It would have been a situation whereby Trump would lock horns with her. Because Harris, I will actually say she's an infant or embryo when it comes to politics there. So if you mention a figure like Michelle Obama, definitely, have difficulty coupled with the court cases we had and the kind of way he actually even left office. Why? Because the Capitol, which is their own National Assembly, was invaded. So if we look at all those kind of things, if we had the likes of Hillary Clinton or Michelle Obama, or one prominent lady figure, I'm not sure Trump would have had the chances he actually had. Because looking at it, there were also some rumors making the rounds that even the Kamala in question was an extract of the, we have black and white America. We also have brown America. Those are the Latinos. Okay. So it's a case of probably she's an extract of the Latinos and probably she's also an immigrant, not a full-fledged American. So there are so many other things. And the policies America is actually looking at are economy, immigrations, and also international affairs. So those are key major features. If there are lapses from those ends and you don't also know how to convince the electorate with convincing arguments, there are chances you're actually going to lose the elections, particularly in strongholds.
All right. Now, before we go forward, talked about immigration now. I saw some things online on Twitter where people are saying, if you want to travel to the USA now, get your passports ready before they swear Trump in. So I think this message connotes that probably once they swear him in, it might be difficult to travel to the USA. And there was also a video of a guy, obviously this guy is in pain. He was watching the election and all of that. And I think he said he's pregnant at this point. He's a trans guy who is pregnant. And he's saying that he knows you already have a problem when it comes to that. There is no issue of she, them now. I think that's
he, she, or it.
Okay, yes. It's no longer allowed in USA once they swear him in. So talking about the policy, talking about immigration, do you think that Trump policies are aware of than that of Harris? Because most people want to travel to the USA, and knowing now that he might not even allow that, and yet it's still one. What can you say about this?
Typically, in any nation, its number one policy will be its country first.
Okay.
Let's relate it to a human being. Now, a human being in question now, if he hasn't eaten, if he hasn't taken a shower, if he or she is not gainfully secured based on the basic necessities of life, probably food, shelter, and clothing, he won't be thinking, or she won't be thinking about another person.
Okay.
So, average countries operating democracy or majority rule system of government, the first policy will be America first. Likewise, Nigeria. Our policy first of all is Nigeria first. So, and that is what the Trump administration is actually caught out for, which is the Republican ideology. The Democrats are more accommodating. The Republicans are not. But if you look at it in the long run, it is because of what has happened in the past, judging from the First World War and the Second World War. So people come in, and when they infiltrate, they try to undermine the system. So that is what the Republicans, by candidacy in which they represent with Trump, will actually want to be fighting against: immigrants. Now, if you look at the immigrants that are actually coming in, each continent or each country is stereotyped. They always have a particular feature. When you talk about the Latinos, Mexico, Paraguay, Uruguay, or maybe even Argentina, what do you think? Drug barons, Colombia. You look at them and they are more or less, they are vicious in their killings when it comes to their drug deals. And when you now have the blacks are more flashy and loud.
Okay.
But irrespective of that, they also have their advantages. If you look at the entertainment industry, it also boosts their GDP for them. If you look at sports also, check the 100 meters, both men and women, you will never see a white man there representing the US. It's always a black man. So these are things you should also look at and weigh in the balance. If you look at the top billionaires down in the US, we should know Sean Carter. That's the popularly known as Jay-Z.
Okay.
So these are people who are into billions. Then the other guy who has a court case now, Diddy. That one is another billionaire also. So if we now talk about the Bezoses or the Bill Gates, those are the white people. So they might be spared. The Republicans who are not accommodating put up a kind of system or policy to actually make sure that whatever America has stays within America. Your taxes. So even you who is even going out of your way to do stuff outside America, it's still one way or the other goes back into the system. It's very difficult. That's why most of the time you ask for assistance from someone overseas. You see him living in a lavish house, but he's on credit. Definitely. He's on loans. Yeah. So you're paying for gas. The gas is expensive. It's based on usage. It's not like here when you're paying for your postpaid, not the prepaid meter now here. So you are practically paying everything on prepaid. So once there's depletion in what you're using, it's a case of you have to renew immediately. Why? Because you have to maintain a standard of living there to meet up. Right? Because for instance, you need to go to work now. Your clothes are not ironed and there's no power. You need to renew that power so you look smart while at work. If you're not looking smart at work, you're looking shabby, your boss might fire you. And you have to go back. The same you who gets back, your boss will still question you or serve you some query. Why are you late? There's some deduction in your salary because you're being paid per hour. So these are things you should look at. So if you are now returning late to work as a white man, you might be favored. But if you're a black guy, you might not be favored. But if you're a brown skinned guy, you'll be treated like someone from the southeast in my own part of the country.
All right. So let's come back to Nigeria.
Yes, with the Ondo state election approaching, that's next week Saturday on the 16th. I'm sure you're going to be covering the election. Do you have
definitely
a preferred candidate, like be it PDP, APC, or are you going to stand neutral?
Okay, on a comical note, I'll begin by saying, as my one-time president said, I belong to nobody and I belong to everybody.
He's a political analyst.
So being a political analyst and a political journalist in the process, we ought to sit on the fence and be liberal.
Like you need to be objective.
We need to be objective and not exactly. Thank you. So if we look at it, election serving as an ingredient now is like you going to the market in the political arena What are you going to sell? Your manifesto. How well is your manifesto selling? That is what we, the analysts or the political journalists, will now come actually to analyze before the people. You can't come as a candidate. We need to outgrow this mentality of, oh, I'm going to provide pipe-borne water. It's your duty when getting into office.
Definitely.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to
Good road.
Good road.
Good
You
road.
actually
No,
was
good
road in the first
hospitals.
place.
It's your duty. Don't tell us you're going to build healthcare centers.
It's your responsibility.
It's your responsibility. It's like a father giving birth to a child and making public that, oh, when he gives birth, I will take care of you. I'll buy you clothes. I'll send you to school. No, it's your obligation. So you don't need to announce it. So we need advanced manifestos whereby you come in and you need to digitalize the system whereby it meets up with today's world so that even the likes of the youths can actually meet up and rub shoulders with people out there. Now you can imagine, well, let me use Techno now, for instance. Techno started as, forgive the balance now, a Palasa phone. But now, as we speak now, Techno is rubbing shoulders now. You can check the megapixels now. Techno is rubbing shoulders now with Samsung. It's rubbing shoulders with Infinix. Who would have thought Techno would transit from Palasa to what it is now? And who are the people making these phones? Children who are practically maybe in secondary schools or whatever, using soldering irons and whatever. But you look at our own secondary school students here, you're having 15 subjects, intro tech and code, just to mention it. And there's no student that likes intro tech in this life. Even the science students didn't like intro tech. Now, you carry 15 books, 15 subjects in your bag and you're going to school. And even the learning environment is not conducive. And then you expect that supposed child to be productive. And you see so many F9s. And then you're having A1 in a subject that is not even making sense at all, for instance. So these are things you should actually begin to zero in, to shift your attention to. Don't promise us water. It's your duty. We know, yes, we need water. Because you're walking on the road, you're thirsty. Nobody will tell you that you need to buy pure water.
Sure.
So I think they should shift from promising us what is their responsibility to actually hitting the stone on the head. Now, it doesn't end with hitting the stone on the head on what you're going to provide on a landmark note. There are also things which they should also look out for. Majority from their manifesto, both candidates who are actually, in other all-cycle elections, we had 3 horsemen. It's either the APC, the PDP, and Labour Party. Or the Labour Party, either the APC, the PDP, and the SDP, or the NNPP, depending on the locale or the region or district. Now, if we look at it now, Ondo State, now we only have PDP and APC, who are the 2 major warlords, nationally speaking. Now, if we look at those 2 candidates now, they seem to share 3 similar policies: infrastructure, agriculture, and economy. Those are the main 3 they are actually focusing on. And even candidates and even, I would say, followers or allies in both parties are both intertwined. It's either this member decamped from the APC to the PDP, or this member from the PDP decamped to the APC, or probably some other party members had left some weaker parties and moved over to the APC, not finding the environment conducive. They moved over to the PDP, and actually it's been like that. Secondly, I noticed that to make sure that even their policies are actually influential to hit the people, that's why I began by making the manifesto sellable. They don't actually have any strong, let me use what we will understand here, godfather, to actually be persuasive to the candidates and actually make sure, yes, I have it backing. You know, there are people when they are standing behind you, they don't need to say anything. Their presence alone throws enough weight to you, and it's like, forgive my language, but there are some children, okay, yes. When a little child say, my daddy, I will tell my daddy. So that's the way the godfather will be. Assuming may his soul rest in peace, Aketi was still alive. It now meant that if he didn't have any altercations with Lucky, because the present candidate for the PDP was his former deputy, whom he sacked from office. That's why I began by making relations to decamping from the APC to the PDP. So it would have been a serious tug of war. Why? Because it would now be a case of a repetition of what happened in Edo State. Why? Because some party member left a particular party to the other side, and some godfather is throwing his weight to get back at the other person. So it's a vendetta note being met out on the other person. That's the way the Ondo State election now is going to turn out, or would have turned out.
Okay, so now that he died, and should I say tug of war that you mentioned, both of them, they won't fight anyone or what have you, the godfatherism thing. So do you think the next week election, do you think it's going to be free and fair?
Well, I would say when we say free and fair, the stakeholders are involved, the electorate, the candidates, and even security agencies and also observers. On the show the other time, I had to inquire from a friend, and he was letting me understand that they are brothers, that they will not fight against themselves. That it's just the elections that they are after. Who wins, fine. Who loses, fine. After that, everybody still hugs themselves. So I want to believe that even that should be a definition of sportsmanship if there are no legal battles or tussles at the end of the elections.
Okay, so some citizens, we know they refrain from voting. I was in a public transport recently, and they were talking about the bad situation in the country, how Tinubu is doing this and that. I know one man in the vehicle asked the other, because whatever they were talking about was really not my concern as such. And then he asked the man that was so angry about the whole thing, like, did you vote the last time? Then the man said, why should I vote? I can't vote, because if I vote, my vote does not count. Those were like, then Tinubu is not doing you any wrong. And it was like, is Tinubu not doing me any wrong? Is it doing the right thing? And then they said, okay, you didn't vote. You had the right to vote. You had the right to choose the person you want in government. But when the day of election came, you didn't go to vote. So you don't even have any right to judge him and all of that. And he said, no, you shouldn't tell him that. He's still not going to vote because he believes his vote does not count and all of that. So we have lots and lots of people out there who would argue, who would tell you the present government is not doing just by them, but yet they don't vote.
That's my table.
So what specific measures can be implemented to encourage higher voter turnout in the face of concerns about electoral corruption?
Implementations that actually can be executed. We talk about credibility, fairness, but in factual sense, there's no credibility and fairness so far so good since 1993, even up till now. I'll say on a slighter note, maybe in 2017, I would just say a sense of sportsmanship, where even before Goodluck Jonathan lost before the result was even announced, Goodluck had actually congratulated Buhari. Okay, that's the sportsmanship we should be talking about. But if we look at it, the seed of deceit and lies and false information that's actually been passed down to the people, whereby they know this particular party or candidate actually won. And then behind the scenes, there's some altercations or alterations. Why? Because they want a particular person to get into power. Now, zeroing in now on this fellow who was asked whether he or she voted. The fellow might be apolitical. Why? Because of what he or she must have witnessed or experienced every 4 years. And that will now begin to sow some seed of voter apathy in his family. Why? Because that's if it's a man or a woman. It's a man. So it will now sow that seed of discord in the lives of the children. And the children will now go and start talking about it in front. My daddy said we should not vote because the country is this. The person that they even see is not it. So all those kind of childish talk. Children's minds are very fragile. The adolescents, their minds are very fragile. And these are people who will grow into adults. So we who are adults, we have a long way to go to sensitize our level of thinking, because what we say begins to build up in the subconscious of those little ones, and they begin to grow with that, and they become unconsciously apolitical, and some sense of voter apathy begins to set in. So we owe ourselves a duty as adults to begin to be sincere, credible, and fair enough. Not only INEC, because when you get to the polling booth, there are people who will come with intimidations. And even in Edo States, where I'm from, they will practically put a gun beside you there, and they will speak in their pidgin English. They feel na metalo.
Don't be toy.
So they will let it equal. That's what they will ask you. So in a metal equal, they will want you to actually vote the party they want. That's the intimidation I'm talking about. If you are stubborn, you go against them. No worry now. I'll go run you street. So you collect. So all those guys, it's South language. They're speaking vernacular. Just this Edo State election that was just concluded, I was discussing with one lady, and there was a case whereby a political party was, they were all about social media, and the craze was that they are actually going to win. But 2 weeks to the election, there was a game change. It's a case of mathematics, a chess game. You watch the moves of your opponents, re-strategize, and when you come out big. Before you say jack is checkmate. And that was what happened in Edo State. Long story short, this lady actually served this lady a particular amount, 10,000 naira. And she collected it and went to vote for the opposition. Upon voting for the opposition, she collected a higher figure, 30,000 naira. So it's a case of each polling unit being a marketplace. The highest bidder is actually going to get my vote. So now it now means that voting now has been monetized. Election has been monetized. So the highest bidder will actually get the electorate. Now, how long will that 10,000 naira last? Because even the price of food, now here, bag of rice now is how much? It's over 100K.
If you want to buy one rubber of rice now, I think it's about 3,800 naira.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So how much is a tuber of yam now?
A tuber of yam, I think you should be able to get small 3 yams for 1,000 naira.
So if I may borrow the words of Precious now,
Yeah.
you're actually selling your birthright.
Yeah, they are selling their birthright on their own drive.
So that if you look at it now, and there was some after collecting that 30,000 naira, the lady who actually gave this other lady the 10,000 naira to vote in favor of her own party, they ended up engaging in some form of fisticuff, landed them in the police cell. Your rights, which you now are mad, engaging in violence, landed you in police cell. And it was uncalled for, factually speaking, at the end of the day. So if we look at all these things, you're actually selling your birthright at the end of the day.
All right. You briefly talked about the Edo election. Now we have the Ondo election to look forward to. There's been issue regarding the INEC Harris Bukola. And there's a complaint by the PDP party about her being from Ondo State. This statement, there was a rebuttal from Alex Kalejaye, who is the APC publicity speaker. What do you think about this, and how would this affect the voters' turnout? Now, we already have a problem of people not voting because they believe their vote does not count. Now, we also have an issue of doubt regarding who the INEC REC is. We also have issue of Loke Ayedatiwa not being accepted by the APC candidates, and all of that. Has been rifts going on in Ondo State, low-key, that, well, maybe other states do not know about. But what do you think? How do you think this would affect the turnout of voters during election in Ondo State?
Well, when there's a in-house crisis, it's like a keg of gunpowder waiting to explode.
Okay.
And if it's not addressed, it turns out to become a time bomb that has been ticking, and the damage is going to be caused. The damage it's going to cause, rather, is going to be catastrophic, and that catastrophic is going to be in caps. Because where communication stops, conflict sets in. I believe people should open up and talk about a particular issue so it's earlier addressed in due time. If it's not addressed in due time, it's going to cause serious issues. It's like a husband and wife fighting, and the woman is always clamming up, keeping quiet, and she starts talking in monosyllables. And the husband is asking, what happened? Why? Because her facial expression alone is not quite well. It's not giving the vibe. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the next thing is for him to ask, what's going on? She clams up first time. What's going on? She clams up second time. Third time, she clams up. The man gets pissed. And any right-thinking man, to avoid trouble, it's not that, oh, let me speak in my local parlance.
Okay.
If wala come, no wala.
Okay.
No, it's not like wala. So to avoid the wala now, he will either leave the house to go and hang out with friends or maybe watch a football match just to leave the atmosphere because it's tensed. Now, a situation where communication stops, conflict sets in. People are not talking. Why? Because maybe there might be some underground conflicts going on. You just made mention now that even the APC party is not even accepting the candidate of Lucky, but they seem to forget that there's power of incumbency. But let's see how that turns out to be, because an incumbent governor actually couldn't even use his power to bring in his endorsed candidates. So being the incumbent governor, whether he will actually be accepted by the party to get the number 1 seat of the Sunshine State is another issue. Now, on the part of Agbola Ajayi, on his own part, he is a common man of the people from what I have read from sources making the rounds. If he knocks on a door, definitely people are going to answer him. Why? Because he has been with the Zenith Labour Party, he has been with the PDP, he has been with the APC. So someone who is long-standing as a political figure within these areas, the next thing is for him to be widely accepted. He stands an edge. But with the internal crisis PDP is actually having, we do not know. But from the federal level at the center, there might be some influence actually in the elections.
All right. Now, you talked about Agbola decamping, obviously from Zenith to APC and now to PDP. Now, I feel like, in my own opinion, this decamping thing, I feel is one of the major problems we have in Nigeria. Like you said earlier, in the USA, we have the Democrats, we have the Republican, and you have to stand by that party till your demise. But in Nigeria, we move from one pillar to another post. When there is a problem here, probably you contested or you wanted to go for a political position and then you did not win, or there's a problem, you decamp from this party to the other. Don't you think this inconsistency is one of the things that are affecting Nigerians as a whole?
We should start with loyalty. Where do the loyalty of our
Why should we
politicians
vote
lie?
for people that are not even loyal to themselves?
That's why sometimes we could justify voter apathy and at the same time not justify it at the end of the day.
Okay.
Because this is what will actually make people, like the man which you said,
Yeah.
why would I vote? Now, this politician now moves from APC to PDP. Tomorrow now, if Social Democratic Party, the SDP, that had been on ground since 1993,
Yeah.
will now begin to like make waves. Don't be surprised that the APC members and PDP members will begin to go there. Why? Because there's one influential figure that everybody is actually going for. And there will be some money back who will actually be ready to throw money in. And the SDP will begin to like stamp his 2 feet on the heads of the PDP and the APC. So ultimately, in caps now, what we should look at now, politics is always about interest. And the interest is not always, in our own case, it's quite sad, tragically speaking. The interest now is not just for the people now or the political party. It's for the pockets of the politicians. That's where we'll now look at them as, they call them the bourgeoisie. Those are the people who are actually influencing decisions.
Yeah.
So we look at them and they are the money bags. Here in Nigeria, we're giving them a new name, Godfathers. So when I heard Godfathers, we used to know it as all those mafia films.
Yeah.
But Nigeria here now, it's a different ball game.
Yeah.
So it's quite glorifying. It says a godfather and it's not like a chairman. So we should look at it that politics is all about interest. Now, who does the interest actually serve? Ultimately, it's meant to serve the people. That's what democracy defines. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the interest now is not even serving the people, which it should serve. It's quite sad that should continue serving only a few. And I think that should be corrected. And when it's serving the people, we are talking about how do we serve the people here? We're talking about the resources and assets the nation has. It's not serving the people. It's actually serving the politicians.
All right,
Okay. So with all the fears as regards the upcoming election, the Ondo election, in what ways do you think government and electoral bodies can demonstrate their commitment to conducting free and fair elections?
I wrote an article the other time, infusing technology and elections. Now, most of the time, we are talking about the use of AI, artificial intelligence. Yeah. How can we adopt AI now for the elections? Sorry, that's my initials, Abby.
AI.
I'm very endowed.
I actually thought he was calling me.
So many people now are adopting AI for their jobs and for technological advancement one way or the other, not only restricting it to science and technology alone. If you look at now, even in the entertainment industry, you could generate some images with AI for your poster where you have text to speech or text to image or text to audio or text to video. So if we can fuse in technological advancements, because sticking it to opening some portal sites to upload, fine, that's technology's website, but that's just the basis or basics. Bringing in, what are they calling it? The BVAs, which is actually a device to register the PVCs. That's not enough. We also need technological advancements that can also, okay, now we have the POS, that's point of sale, Abby.
Yeah.
Now it should be, I'll call it point of vote, POV.
Okay.
So a situation whereby as you're voting, automatically it's feeding in a database. So people are seeing the live scores there, just as the footballers will say on their something there on their sites or apps or whatever. So you're not seeing live scores here, you're seeing live votes. So it's not a case of one particular political party had to influence a resident election commissioner. Why? Because probably she's from the state. She might use her position to influence elections. No. So it's going to be a case of not even the overall head nationally, that's the INEC boss, can actually influence the decisions now. Now, the power is now in the thumbs of the people there from the POV, the point of votes. So you can even vote. Let me say, even if the voting in the Congress can actually start here in Nigeria, whereby it's not a case of those in majority say aye, those say nay, the ayes have it, you slam the gavel. No, you get to the Congress, it's a silent vote. You see the figures on the screen there. So we now know who has actually won. So it's not a case of somebody altering the whole something. That is how far we should go. Not that we can't afford it. Don't go and tell me you're affording a yacht somewhere in some island there and you're drinking champagne there. That's where you should channel the money to.
600K champagne.
You know? And their children are spending money lavishly on our zoo, maybe
Nice.
here or maybe probably in Switzerland. So these are things we should look at. If those funds can be channeled to the elections, I think that's when it can be more credible, more fair, and you begin to douse the doubt or doubting Thomas of any voter who wishes to perpetuate voter apathy.
All right. You talked about technology. You talked about beavers. Now let's go to that. Beavers and IREV, all these platforms or all this technology that we've used over the time, we've seen lapses and we've seen fault. Now you talked about something that I feel like if the government should hear this idea that you gave right now sounds so nice. Like I think you need to go into politics and please just tell them we can do point of vote at this point. Like we really need this. Now looking at all those things that you've just said, which I believe is really, really good. And the government can actually, make use of this and deploy it into our election and would have free and fair election. But then, like I said, Beavers was also, he was good at first. And then later, everything just went south. What if at all the government takes in this idea of yours? Because I really hope the government can take this in. Mm-hmm. If at all the government takes in this idea of yours and then we start, we also know that we have people that hacks accounts. Like if what you're seeing, they will still fault it. There's a way they can do it. In this kind of situation, what do you think the government needs to do? Because I believe the government we have right now in Nigeria, they have strategy, but most of the strategy they have is for the future. They probably do not look at and the important thing is pay attention to the smallest details. So while you're looking at the future, also look at the present. How can I make this work? And they always have this strategy of, we have a big and grand strategy without also looking at the other side. So let's assume they even take in this idea of yours, which is really great. How do you think they can also curb the necessary things that can come up later, which would affect this idea?
What you're actually referring to there is hacking.
Yeah.
That's where cybersecurity now comes in. Now, it's not just hacking is not a bad thing, because if it was actually bad, the FBI and CIA or KGB have in Russia or MI6 in the UK won't be making use of it. Mm-hmm. So we need to know the good side and the bad side. Now, the hacking of the elections, which people have actually executed via point of vote, like I said earlier on, to actually manipulate it. Now, that's bad. But to the point of vote where it is now there, you now have cybersecurity personnel to prevent the hacking. Not that they don't know how to hack it. Mm-hmm. They know how to prevent the hacking. Now, that's good. So the government or whatever administration that may be can employ the services of private companies, just like our platform, which of course we have a tool on ground, the election monitoring app, which can actually, let people know live scores or live votes on the go. And just to mention a few, the international observers, it doesn't end with the international observers coming on board to actually say or state, so person got so votes. Yes, you brought the statistics. Fine. But this is what INEC said. Because people will still influence all those kind of something. That's where credibility and fairness now sets in with private institutions, just as I mentioned from Veegil. And just to mention, there's one they call Statista or something. Yeah. So when you bring in all this and other election monitoring apps also to come in to play their roles, it will actually play or serve as a major factor for checkmating all this kind of something. Because if we might borrow what the good book says, the heart of the man is desperately wicked. So if you now approach some hacker with $20,000, this is an offer you can't refuse, he will definitely hack it. Why? Because he knows that, this is more than my salary times how much. So by the time you calculate $20,000 times 1,740 or 750, from one false move. But after that, you've already suffered people. You're still going to be questionable to your maker at the end of the day. But that aside, we need cybersecurity personnel to be employed by the administration that is on ground, brought in to serve the electoral umpire. By that, I mean INEC, to make sure that the POVs or the points of votes are actually credible and fair.
All right. You talked about an application on ground at Vigitech, but I also like to ask you a question in regards to that. Now, the people are they are in doubt when it comes to INEC and all that they do, because they feel that it lacks credibility. This application you're talking about, are they going to partner with INEC? Because now we have the people fearing that whatever INEC is putting out there is false. Is this application, this VG Media Tech application you're talking about, are they going to partner with INEC?
Definitely they will have to. Why? Because they will have to obtain some license.
Okay.
That license is now what to make them function effectively, because that license will now be a case of, I'm authorized to actually do this. Because if you're not licensed, you can't be authorized to do anything. It's just like someone who is hiding in the shadows to do stuff, and that's cutting corners. So this will actually checkmate everything, which I said earlier on.
But then INEC do not interfere in what is going on that application.
Definitely not.
All right. Thank you very much, Odiawa AI, artificial intelligence, for joining us on the show this afternoon. It was really an enlightened one, and I actually got one thing or two there.
It was amazing.
There's this issue of the VG Tech app that is coming up, and I really hope politicians can make use of this in order to secure their votes. Because this issue of always taking each other to the courts when after the election is already getting on everyone's nerve. So if we have an application that helps us to monitor the election, I think it would reduce the judiciary always having to settle case all the time. All right, so that would be all on today's episode, and it was nice having Odiawa on the show, and I want to say a big shout out to Precious for joining me on the show this afternoon. Thank you for bringing all the vibes.
Thanks for having me.
And I also want to say a big shout out to Toby for joining us in the studio, and the producer Paul for also staying with us in the studio. Until the next, do have a great weekend. Bye.